Attorney General. I want to start out with some thank yous for the amazing group of individuals and teams that helped us get to where we are today. Chief among them, Governor Gavin Newsom, and Gustavo Velasquez, Director of the California Department of Housing and Community Development. You will hear from both of them momentarily. I also want to acknowledge the members of my office's Housing Justice team, which I'm very proud of, has been very active, very aggressive in enforcing existing law. Some are here today. Others couldn't be here in person, but I want to mention them and thank them. I know I'm embarrassing them because they don't do it for the recognition, but I want to recognize them for their great work that helped get us here today and to many of our other resolutions with other cities who are breaking the law. Senior Legal Analyst Jennifer Adame, Deputy Attorney General Matthew Struhar, Supervising Deputy Attorneys General David Pye and Christina Bull-Arndt, and Special Assistant Attorney General Alex Fish. We have a great team, proud of the work that we're doing, and we are here today to announce the results of some of that work. The end to a lawsuit we filed against the city of Elk Grove more than a year ago after the city illegally denied a new proposed housing project. And let me be clear, they should have approved it. We shouldn't be here today. It shouldn't have taken this long. There should have been 66 units approved almost 2 years ago. And they had many opportunities to come within compliance of the law and refused to. And so one of our messages today is whether you are Huntington Beach or Elk Grove or Woodside or Pasadena, whatever city you are, you have a duty and an obligation to follow the law of the state of California. We will remind you what it is. We hope you will comply when we point that out. But if you don't, we will sue you, we will take you to court, and you will comply, one way or the other. Unfortunately today, it was the other. But they are complying even more so. There's going to be more housing built because of our settlement than if they had just originally approved the 66-unit housing project at Oak Rose. I'm grateful for more housing, but we shouldn't have had to go through this process. The homes that are being built are homes that the city needed. As leaders, the city of Elk Grove, the council, and the mayor should know that. Our housing laws are not suggestions. They are not recommendations. They are not optional for your consideration. They are the law. They are a shall. They are a must. They are a mandatory. You have to follow them. And if cities try to skirt them, try to avoid building the housing we need, try to illegally deny housing proposals, discriminate against communities, as Elk Grove did, the DOJ will hold them accountable. And we will work with our team members in being aggressive. Today is proof. Elk Grove has now agreed to 80 new one-bedroom apartments for lower-income folks. Mind you, the original project was 66 units. So they've already approved 80 units, more units than the original project, and larger units than the original proposal. And the city has also agreed to identify an additional site for more affordable housing development, more homes that must be built in a high-resource area that matches the development capacity of the original illegally denied proposal. So they have the 80 units that they are already committed to. That's moving now, and then there's another zoned area that will be available for 66 additional units. So original project, 66 units. Now we're in the 146 unit range, more units. On top of that, with this settlement, Elk Grove has also agreed to report their ongoing compliance with state housing law. They are going to be issuing monthly reports. They've agreed to be closely monitored by HCD for the next 5 years. So we will be keeping close watch on them. And should they violate the law, should there be a need for enforcement, we have the ability to go to court. The court will retain jurisdiction over Elk Grove's housing decisions going forward. And again, while I'm glad this matter has finally settled and that 80 new homes will be built with 66 waiting in the wings, it's frustrating that it took us getting involved to begin with. When we told, well, the city of Elk Grove should have just followed the law in the first place without the involvement of HCD or DOJ. When they heard from both of us that they were violating the law, they shouldn't have resisted. They shouldn't have made arguments that twisted them in knots. They shouldn't have pretended they were complying with the law. So it's frustrating that we have to do this, but do this we will. We will continue to enforce the law against any city that fails to follow it. And let's just get to the heart of why for a quick second. California is in the grips of a housing crisis. It requires all hands on deck and all tools in the toolbox. Everyone needs to participate in the solution. We have the highest rate of unsheltered people in the nation. More than half of renters spend more than a third of their income on their rent. And those who can even entertain the idea of buying are priced out. It is irrefutably unjust. It's unacceptable. It's unsustainable. It will take action and commitment to addressing the challenge. At the bare minimum, you must comply with the law. So we ask our cities, we demand of our cities, act in good faith, comply with the law, do your part. No city needs to do everything to solve California's housing problem, but every city must do something. Participate in the solution. Build some housing. Do your part. We all have a responsibility. It is a shared responsibility. Don't wait for someone else to do what you should be doing. Do your part. For cities following our housing laws is the bare minimum, and every local government it doesn't just have a legal obligation to tackle this crisis. They have a moral obligation to make space for our neighbors, to create a better future for the next generation, to make California affordable, to make the dream of home ownership a little closer to the reach of everyday Californians. If you believe you're exempt from this responsibility, if you believe this doesn't apply to you, if you think you somehow sit outside the bounds of the law, the governor, Director Velasquez, and my housing justice team will be here to remind you of your duty, of your obligation. So we are grateful that we have this settlement today. Receipts for what we will do, if necessary, when cities violate the law. We hope to never have to do this. We want cities to comply. We want the housing built. We do not seek litigation if it's unnecessary, but if it's necessary because the city makes it necessary, we will pursue it. And we will get results like the results today. We're fed up with cities not building the housing they're supposed to, not following the law. We will continue to enforce. We will continue to be aggressive. We will continue to promote housing justice throughout our state, opportunities for all Californians to live in a state where they can have a place they can call home that's affordable, that's safe, that's secure. Happy to answer questions, but before I do, I want to open it up to and welcome HCD Director Velasquez to say a few words. Then the governor will speak, and then I'll come back for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney General. Good morning. Buenos dias. Gustavo Velasquez, Director of the State Housing Department. First, I want to say that today, as the Attorney General just mentioned, is another really important milestone in the housing accountability front, and especially an important milestone in creating, as he said, more housing, which is the primary condition to alleviate the housing affordability crisis and the crisis of homelessness. More housing. The shortage in the state of California is tremendous. We are short by more than 2 million homes in order to stabilize the housing market across the income spectrum, especially housing for people that are confronted by chronic homelessness and those of very low means. And I want to thank the governor for his leadership, his support in creating, back in 2021, the Housing Accountability Unit at HCD now has been renamed to Housing and Homelessness Accountability Unit. We have Shannon West and David Caesar from the Accountability Unit here, and so many other people that work hand by hand with the Department of Justice. I think, Attorney General, this is one of the most successful collaborative partnerships in the state of California government, the administration, HCD, and the Department of Justice. Together, the efforts, 3 years after the Housing Accountability Unit was created, the efforts have enabled, have facilitated, including today with Elk Grove, the creation of more than 7,400 new homes in the state of California, of which 3,000 are affordable homes. This is working. This program actually is unprecedented, first of its kind in the country, created in 2021. And I want to say especially this project is so important because of permanent supportive housing. We're making a lot of efforts, 16,000 units under Project Home Key that has created a lot of new permanent supportive housing, and more to come, thanks to Proposition 1 and Home Key Plus. But this is the type of housing that we need in the state of California the most. And so to the city of Elk Grove, yes, we will be monitoring this city for the next 5 years. We will be reviewing every proposal to develop housing in the city of Elk Grove. We're making sure that more housing is built for those most in need in the city of Elk Grove. And I would just say, on a personal note, I had the privilege a few years ago under the Obama administration to be the Assistant Secretary for the Office of Fair Housing at HUD. And I knew then what is true today as well, that people with disabilities, physical, visual impairments, mental disorders are some of the most affected in their efforts to secure safe, decent, dignified, accessible, affordable housing. And this lawsuit started because of a denial that would affect people with disabilities and others that need the supportive services in housing. And for that, I think this is another great milestone in addition to upholding important pieces of legislation that this governor has signed into law, like SB 35, now 423, the Housing Accountability Act, Fair Housing Law. But this is another great milestone, Attorney General, in upholding, in securing the legacy in the state of California to uphold fair housing laws and create inclusive communities of opportunities up and down this great state. And with that, let me bring to the front our great governor, Governor Gavin Newsom.
I appreciate you reminding everybody what this project was about. It was for people with disabilities, and it was denied 66, 67 unit development. At the same time, the city was approving similar sized developments, but not for people with disabilities. So just want to sort of level set the why we're here. But I came enthusiastically when I heard about this press conference today because I wanted to thank the Attorney General. I want to thank him for his partnership, for his leadership, not just his stewardship, for taking this a theory of the case that we had a few years ago relating to housing accountability to a whole nother level and driving that accountability and backing up that accountability. We came up with an idea a few years ago, $4.3 million set aside in the budget. We had 25 or so folks that we had identified to develop and design this unit. We were hopeful it would produce real results. Never did we expect an Attorney General to associate himself and partner so forcefully with that unit in a collaborative space that has advanced demonstrable results in just a few years. So again, gratitude and respect for your team. Many of them we had an opportunity to talk to just a moment ago, to our team collectively in the state of California for their good work, and for the legislature for enabling and supporting this process the entire time. Thank you, ultimately, the folks in Elk Grove for eventually doing the right thing. However, they found their way there. They eventually landed in the right spot, and ultimately, despite the denial, the delay, we won't ultimately be denied more units as the Attorney General laid out. As it relates to the deeper issue, and I won't belabor the points because they've been made more eloquently than I could, this is the original sin in the state of California. We can't make up for 50 years of neglect. The world we invented in many respects is now competing against us. I said it ad nauseum. You've heard me, it's a bingo card. State vision is realized at the local level. Localism is determinative as it relates to housing, as it relates to all policy making. And NIMBYism has gotten in the way of progress, and it has impacted the quality of life and the cost of living in the state of California. There's no issue that impacts the state in more ways on more days than the issue of housing. If there was one, I get this question all the time, if there's one thing you would do in the state of California, I'd rewind the last 50 years as it relates to housing policy and do exactly what we are doing now. Not only as it relates to accountability, but flexibility and land use reform, SEQA reform. I have signed 34 SEQA reform bills as governor of the state of California, providing resources and a resourceful mindset to support with technical assistance, support communities, large and small, all across this state. And we have been doing that. Now, the most important thing is to tune in and see what the Fed does with interest rates and continue the progress as we tame inflation to see those interest rates decline and to start getting the housing production moving again in the state of California. 2.5 million. That's the new established legal goals by 2030 in the state of California under this RENA process. The housing element we continue to enforce. And I want to thank in closing on this, we continue to improve upon our graduated sanctions strategy. We have not rested on our laurels. We're not standing still. And I want to thank, in particular, the legislature. One bill that I will acknowledge I will sign. None of those you ask me will I lay claim to that process, at least, or that conclusion, that is. But 1037, SB 1037, Scott Wiener, working with our office very collaboratively, has created a process so we can stop the abuses of places like Huntington Beach that continue doesn't get it. Not only do they not get things done, they don't get it. The crisis of affordability and the manifestation of the very problem they criticize and complain about. They are a poster child, continue to be a poster child. And I guess it's just they need attention. But they also need to get their act together. They're wasting millions of dollars of taxpayers' money. They continue to lose over and over and over and over again. 1037 will remedy the sanction component of that judicial abuse and process once and for all. And so, once again, we put Huntington Beach on notice, and I will conclude formally because I began formally as governor of California, asserting the state's right on behalf of 40 million people to move in a different direction and hold Huntington Beach accountable. You may recall 47 jurisdictions we called out in that first press conference among the first few days I was in office. Huntington Beach continues to thumb their nose despite, as I said, losing month in, not just year in, month out, year out. And that abuse soon will come to an end. We look forward to more progress, more housing, and more settlements because of the Attorney General's leadership in this space. With that, I turn the mic back over to our host, the Attorney General.
Well, thank you again, Mr. Governor, for your partnership, your friendship, your leadership. I do want to just put another point of emphasis on the collaboration. I think the people of the state deserve to have their leaders working together, teaming up to address our biggest challenges, including certainly housing. Proud to do that with HCD and the governor, the legislature. We are all leaning in, and I also want to just encourage our cities to be part of that collective effort. Lean in. Do more than the legal minimum. Help us as a state achieve the goals we need. We need everyone on board, and we will be there to help encourage you if you don't. So with that, let me just say thank you to everyone for being here. Happy to open it up to any questions you may have. Hi.
Do you think $150K in attorney's fees and a couple of years of oversight will be enough to deter wealthier cities than Elk Grove from testing the boundaries of your office?
I think doubling, more than doubling, the housing that they were going to build originally, being required under our settlement to do that. 5 years of court oversight with monthly reports. And this has never been about the money and is not about the money. It's about the housing. The housing, the housing, the housing. They would have built less housing if they approved the original project. Now they're building over double, or the zoning plus the 80. So yes, I mean, we went hard with this group, with the city of Elk Grove, They settled with the developer, and I think they thought they settled with us. We are not the developer. We have goals, requirements, and standards. So through our settlement, they are required to do more than their settlement with the developer. So whether it's Woodside, who reversed course in one day, Pasadena, who got on track, Huntington Beach, who loses seemingly weekly in court, or Elk Grove, we will sue you, and we will win, as we have, if necessary. And again, we don't want it to be necessary. We have better things to do than to sue cities who know better from failing to comply with housing laws. So just comply. Do your part. But this is a strong settlement. We're proud of it. We're going to see more housing than originally contemplated by, over double potentially because of our settlement. And we think it sends the right message, which is a strong and aggressive one.
Part of the problem was that it was not going to be allowed in the Old Town District, and that Elk Grove has identified the new site that is on the boundaries of the city. So is there any stipulation as to where this new site has to be?
Yes, a highest resource area. So downtown was a high resource area. We're now requiring it to be in a higher resource area than the original project. So surrounded by even more supports, job opportunities, educational opportunities, transit opportunities, business opportunities. So it's a higher requirement. And there are designated areas that meet that requirement. They'll have to pick one of those for the zoning. So again, stricter, more exacting than the original project, demanding more of the city that has violated the law at the end of the day.
What do you have to say to neighbors who oppose this project that will not be built in its initial location? What do you say to the neighbors that oppose the project who say, at the end of the day, it's not going in where they didn't want it to go, and so it worked out for them?
I don't know if it worked out for them. They didn't want any housing. They didn't want the 66-unit housing project built. They're going to get 146. So you tell me if that worked out for them. Elk Grove needs to do its part. Now they're doing more than originally contemplated. That there's going to be bigger units, better units, one-bedroom units that are larger in size for supportive housing than the 66-unit project. There's going to be a second project zone in a higher resource area than the original project. So the city has a duty, and they're doing much more in the end than originally if they just complied with the law.
Attorney General, I have a quick question about the special session the governor described recently. State top law enforcement official, what do you feel like the law says about the legislature's legal responsibility to gavel in a special session?
I feel that I represent the governor in this matter, and if the governor wishes to address this issue, he may.
Would you like to address the issue?
Yeah, I mean, we're making progress. We're moving forward. You saw the legislation was introduced yesterday. The legislature's moving. They're assigning committees. And I applaud and appreciate and seen joint statements, both the speaker as well as the pro tem, who I met with over an hour last night. We're going to get this done.
Governor, what was that conversation with the pro tem like then? Because he seemed to change his tone this morning on, we'll have an update on where they stand on this.
I mean, it was very constructive. We put out a joint statement. I think it speaks for itself. Progress. We're moving forward. We're going to get this done. Speaker's already put together his committees. We're moving it as expeditiously as we possibly can. We were hopeful to get it done at the end of the legislative session. That was not the case. And as you know, that primarily was at the direction of the Speaker and the Assembly. The Assembly is now taking leadership in the first step of this special session. And we're going to make progress to address a vexing issue that impacts every single Californian. And that's the abuse of the oil companies that tends to happen around this time every year as it relates to price spiking. You experienced it 2 years ago. I think it was October 4th, 2022. $2.61 more than the national average. We saw gas prices averaging in California $6.42. You saw it last year on September 30th, $2.25 above the national average. Today, it's roughly $1.43 above the national average. But we know this is the time of year that we have planned and unplanned refinery maintenance, which spikes the cost of gasoline and spikes the profits of those that are doing the maintenance. 5 companies have 90% market share in the refinery space. I mean, how dumb do we want to continue to be played as fools, which they've been doing for decades and decades, billions and billions of dollars, hardworking folks being fleeced by the greed of these oil companies. These price spikes go directly in their pocket. And that's why we did a special session a year ago. I applaud legislative leadership for moving forward with the kind of transparency that has allowed us to understand the refinery issue in relationship to supply-demand. At the end of the day, not dissimilar to the issue of housing. Supply-demand. Demand remains relatively constant. Supply drops with unplanned and planned maintenance. And then we see huge increase in profits and costs to those going to the pump. And we're trying to get our arms around that. And both legislative leaders are committed to that process.
For those Democrats, though, who might be worried about voting on this in swing districts where WISPA and whoever else will advertise that this is going to raise prices, not just in this state, but Arizona and Nevada, does that not worry you at all, just for the Democratic Party broadly?
Well, I guess so. We should just roll over and allow oil companies to take advantage of taxpayers. I mean, I would imagine that should worry us a little bit more. To be played as fools, to see price spikes and have no solution, no answer, to allow these guys to run roughshod over us, to lie and deceive us for decades, as we know they've done as well as the issues of climate change, to experience record-breaking heat and drought and all the related impacts, to cost the taxpayers billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars that impact our general fund, impact our ability to solve the issues of ignorance, poverty, and disease, to not have a thing to say except, well, these oil companies, they're trusted folks, and, they've been struggling a little bit because world oil prices at the wholesale level a little bit down, and they just, they have these moments where they just deserved their windfall. I mean, 90 days, $63 billion in net profits a couple years ago. In 90 days. They've been gouging you. They've been lying to you. And so, no, I don't think it should have any impact. The status quo is the biggest determinative, I think, in terms of the political question being answered. And I think we have a political imperative as representatives of the people to meet this moment and call them out and hold them accountable for this kind of manipulation.
Governor, we're getting into the home stretch before the election here. I know you've done a ton of fundraising for Senate candidates, for the Harris campaign. Are there particular state ballot measures that you're planning to get really involved on? And specifically, it would be great if you could weigh in on Prop 36. I mean, you said you don't support that policy. Are you planning to campaign against?
I'm going to do what I can. I got 991 things that are in front of me first. That's the number of bills, quite literally, 991, that are coming to my desk. I think we have about 100 that I'll start going through starting tomorrow and Friday. So it's an enormous task, that alone, let alone the task of supporting these candidates, et cetera. So, look, I don't know the answer to that question, but Prop 36 is bring us back to the 1980s. It's about mass incarceration, not mass treatment. What an insult. I mean, what an actual insult it is to say it's about mass treatment when there's not a dollar attached to it, not $1 attached to it. And I hope there's some accountability to those that are asserting that they're challenged to say, well, wait, where are the resources? Not a dollar. It's about mass incarceration. It's about bringing us back to the failed war on drugs. It's nothing you hear now, and they're not even talking about retail theft. Remember, the 950 threshold's not even in there. That was the ultimate tell that this was never about that. There are 22 counties. I'll remind you, stress test this, 22 counties that don't have one residential treatment bed today with all the resources we flooded into these counties, not one. And they're talking about mass treatment. So I have deeply held points of view, but I'm not naive about the politics of this. And I'm not naive about politicians playing to the politics. But there's also principles. And I spent my life being a champion for the underdog, for diverse communities that have been disproportionately impacted by this war on drugs. And I will not stand idly by and play into the prevailing winds that some politicians in the state are.
So to follow up on that, what you said about treatment beds, I mean, one thing that proponents of that measure have been pointing to is Prop 1, which obviously you champion, and they've been saying, you know, that
Wasn't designed for Prop 36.
So is that your
It wasn't
response?
designed over the course of years with this initiative in mind. It was designed over the course of years in partnership with communities all across this state to address the mental health crisis in the state of California, to provide flexibility as it relates to the issue of housing and homelessness. It was a reform of the Mental Health Services Act, and it was a set-aside of $6.38 billion for new housing and new construction. Right now, you have counties that are refusing to even implement conservatorship reform because they lay claim they don't have the workforce today, let alone the workforce tomorrow, on a mass quote-unquote treatment plan. So, no, I find that rather specious and convenient for those that are looking for a easy answer to a difficult question, one they simply aren't equipped to answer because they don't know what they're talking about. And those, forgive me, are not words I say lightly. They don't know what they're talking about. They're not looking at this from the prism of the state of California. They're not looking at the prism of reality of what's happening on the ground. That mandate will increase incarceration. It will increase the cost of the taxpayers by billions and billions of dollars. Don't take my word for it. The independent legislative analyst said that. That's money we won't have for other priorities in this state. And it's also an initiative that cannot be reformed unless we go back to the voters. I pray the people of the state of California take time, review this, and consider how manipulative those arguments are and how ill-founded they are.
You mentioned retail theft. I wanted to ask about criminal justice policy more generally. There's been a lot of bills passed this year, some that you've already signed, some that are among those 991 on your desk right now, that in small ways go tougher on crime than we've seen Democrats go in a long time, whether it's retail theft or car burglary or sex offenders or any number of crimes. There's bills on your desk that would give stiffer penalties. And I'm wondering if you see generally Democrats, the pendulum swinging for Democrats this year.
I think it's iterative. I think we loosely fall into these convenient frames, and I appreciate the way you're contextualizing the question. I don't see it like that. I see when we talk about these issues, we're open argument, interested in evidence. Let me give you a specific example. We stood together 3.5, almost 4 years ago on this topic before that proverbial pendulum was swinging. The district attorney and I went out there talking about retail theft, the AG, with district attorneys. We established the retail theft task forces. We established the new units with the CHP. We invested hundreds of millions of dollars in grants. He created a new, he'll talk more about this at the DOJ, the work they set up years and years ago, before more of the convenience of this moment from a political frame. So I don't see it that way at all. I see years and years of an iterative mindset on the basis of the facts on the ground. And the one fact that was present that consistently wasn't part of the narrative around Prop 47 was the narrative of 47 never fit the facts. The issue around 47 and retail theft go way outside the parameters of Prop 47. And that's these flash mobs. That's the organized retail theft. That's the third-party sellers. It's something so much larger, so much more complex. And that was a point we made over and over and over again. And it was the point that was emphasized during the legislative session that led to these 10-plus bills that we signed that will substantively address many of those issues. So, again, I don't lay claim to this narrative as it relates to the moment, but maybe the Attorney General has a different point of view. Let's hope not.
No, I agree. And you know, part of our public safety challenges include emerging issues that we've never seen before, things like ghost guns or fentanyl that, you know, 10 years ago didn't have the same level of severity and urgency that they do today. We must be responsive to them. Flash mob, organized retail crime that we have seen more of. And we have been addressing it over the past a number of years together. We've stood at press conferences in the middle of COVID and many since, doing what we're supposed to be doing, being servants to the state, addressing the issues as we see them. And I don't love the labels, to be honest. Holding people accountable in a fair and proportionate way for the crimes they committed is what we were always doing. You can call it reform or not, but it is appropriate to hold people accountable when they break the law of the state of California. It is our social compact. We have the rule of law. People must honor it, and when they break it, then whatever it is, they should be held accountable proportionally for what they've done. We've been doing that. We will continue to do that. Proud to stand with the governor and the legislative authors on the package of bills that really get at some of the holes or challenges that law enforcement was talking to us about with respect to organized retail crime, making sure that you can arrest someone even if the misdemeanor doesn't occur in the presence of the officer, extending the organized retail crime law, making sure that DAs can bring charges when the crime occurs across multiple counties. That's something that only my office has the authority to do today, but with the law being passed, others will, dealing with repeat offenders, aggregation in a way that's appropriate and fair. All good things, thoughtful, focused in the solution. So the organized retail crime package, I thought, was very thoughtful, and proud to stand with the governor and the legislature on it.
Right, but the point I'm trying to make is that it seems that Democrats have been willing this year to go further than you've been willing to go in past years. Scott Wiener's car burglary bill that you signed recently had been unable to advance in recent years. The legislature passed a bill on rape of an unconscious person, making that a violent felony. That was something that had stalled in the legislature for like 8 or 9 years. So there's a number of ways in which it seems that you and your colleagues are willing to go further than you have in the past.
Well, you have to ask the legislature about that. You don't have to ask me. We've been moving on this kind of reforms for years and years and years. So that's a question for the legislature.
So you'll be signing those bills that they sent you?
You know the answer to that question. Come on, I'll take a look at the bills. But as it relates to the issue of enforcement, I mean, we talked about increasing the number of CHP officers years and years and years ago. But hold on. You're talking about members of the legislature, which I respect that question, but that should be directed to members of the legislature, not to the Attorney General and myself.
Was a member of the legislature at a time that allowed
Well,
these bills to
okay,
fail.
perhaps that's the case, but look, the reality is, since you've been Attorney General, it's just, and I love the fact we're both here, this opportunity. We've been making the case for years and years that we've been focused on this for years and years. You can't accuse. I've never been on the defund police side of this stuff. I've always been for pragmatism. I'm the only person in this state that's ever reformed Proposition 47, the only person that has receipts on that. So we're open to argument, interested evidence. I want accountability, but I want smart investments. I want people to promote real solutions and not political dogma that sets us back decades and decades. And that's what Prop 36 does. It was brought to us by extreme conservative district attorneys. And it was braced by some because of prevailing wind. And the consequences, intended and unintended, are very profound. And that's why I'm particularly concerned about it. But again, not naive about the politics of it and how appealing it is for some. And there's certain kind of people, different kind of politicians, people that are the prevailing wind politicians that move in the direction of others, thermometers, or people that are actually out there that are trying to change the temperature a little bit and trying to shapeshift stuff by having a little bit more courage and a little more conviction to stand up even when it's tough and even when the battle doesn't look so promising.
And Governor, regarding the affordability crisis in California, economists tell us that high fuel prices and energy are driving inflation in construction and the cost of goods everywhere. Is there any thought being given? California has some of the highest gas taxes in the nation. Any thought to reducing that, easing regulations, or potentially removing fuels from the cap and trade system?
Well, no, not on the gas tax. Let me tell you why. First of all, the impacts of that in the districts of those that are promoting a gas tax repeal, I hope, are considered. Meaning the investments that are going to roads and bridges, culverts, investments in infrastructure that would be lost. So you can't have that conversation without having that secondary conversation. Where did the gas tax dollars go? Number two, there's nothing about repealing the gas tax that guarantees lower gas prices. Goes into the pocket of those same gas and oil interests. Nothing. There's no mandate, no requirement that the cost at the pump decline commensurate with the reduction of the gas tax. So I reject on both counts, and I hope they will consider the impacts of those significant jobs and investments in the infrastructure of the state. And I don't know many folks, and it doesn't matter where I travel, the most red and rural parts of the state or most progressive in urban parts of the state where people are clamoring for more investment into getting the roads fixed and the potholes filled. And those tax dollars directly benefit those projects.
Governor, I just
Oh, sorry, just...
Do you have a comment on the recent school shooting?
Well, yeah, I'll defer to the Attorney General because we were very animated about it a moment ago, and then I'll add my voice as well.
Yeah. Our hearts go out to all the families impacted. Tragic loss of life. Another striking and sad and tragic example of America's unique disease, leading the world when it comes to gun violence, and it touching us, our families, our loved ones, our children, our neighbors in the most everyday of places, movie theaters and shopping malls and, yes, schools, where kids go to learn and should be able to go to learn without fear of a active shooting drill or an active shooter. So we've seen too many of it. None of it's acceptable. None of it's normal. We will continue to promote the blueprint of California that has led us to be, to transform from 30 years ago from being a state with one of the highest levels of gun violence to now one of the lowest because of our common sense gun laws that make us safer. If others did that, we would be safer. The federal government, other states should do what we have done. But again, my heart goes out to the families on this tragic day. All gun violence tragedies are something to mourn, but certainly when you go to a school, when it includes a school and children, it's just particularly painful as a dad.
Yeah, I just add my voice. Look, I've got 4 kids, one just going into high school. The impact not only directly on the lives that were lost and those injured at this school, the impact on surrounding communities, the impacts, trauma that's occurring all across this country is a disgrace. The commentary around this is so familiar, it's exhausting. The commentary on the other side, talking about the politicalization of people stand up and say, what the hell is wrong with us? This is the only country in the world where we see this over and over and over and over again, and you're going to see it over and over and over and over again. Just God bless it doesn't happen to you or your community or your loved one because of the culture that we've created in this country and the gun laws in this country. In 1989, and Rob Bonta is exactly right, in 1989 the state said enough because of the tragedy of a school shooting in Stockton that led to the modern gun rights movement in many respects in this country. And that's when we did the first assault weapons ban in the United States of America. It led to the national ban. Now you have federal judges like Judge Benitez, that are throwing out those laws and those rules that have been enacted in this state. Decades and decades of leadership, throwing them out on constitutional grounds under this Bruin construct. It's a serious moment in America. It requires serious leadership. And you do not have that from the other party. I mean, you had a nominee for president of the United States that almost lost his life from a member of his party to an assassination, and no substantive conversations around gun safety. No real conversations around background checks. No conversations about assault weapons ban. Large capacity magazine clips. Attorney General talks about bump stocks. Just dismisses that whole cloth because, well, the Supreme Court ruled on it. I guess we just have to roll over. Only in America. So forgive me. That's a father of 4 talking. It's a guy who grew up in California talking. Someone proud of the leadership of the state, the Attorney General, the legislature that's led the nation. And we don't think this, we know this. Gun safety saves lives. We are not talking about confiscating guns. We're talking about common sense, overwhelmingly supported by Republicans, not just Democrats, that are being denied because of the ideologues in the Republican Party and the ideologues increasingly in the federal judiciary.
Thank you for coming, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.